It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. Today's Ag Spotlight episode is sponsored by Coolers. Make every day a cool day for your cows. The Coolers system allows you to control the cow's environment 24/7. For more information, go to NorthAmericanAg.com and find them in the Industry Connect section. Hi, and welcome to the North American Ag Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. I'm excited today to be speaking with a dairy farmer turned entrepreneur. He was born in Ontario, Canada, into a dairy farming family. He's devoted his life and his career to the health and safety of cattle and is now president of AGRITRAC. I'd like to welcome Tom Woodall. Thanks, Tom, so much for being here today.
Thanks, Chrissy. I really appreciate you inviting me onto your show here. So that's great.
Awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about your background?
Oh, I was born and raised on a dairy farm. At the time, the barn that we were working in, it had last been renovated in the 1940s. So it was pretty old school. And we stopped shipping milk when they stopped taking cans in the early 70s. So that kind of goes back to how I started and dealing with barns and why getting into the renovation business, it was like I was a hero because I had put up with, that old barn for so long. But anyway, I took on a summer job in 1975 with a barn renovator, a guy that, installed new stabling and stable cleaners. Wow, that was amazing. Right. We still used a litter carrier at home with the track around the barn. So, but I went back working for him after I graduated college with a farm business management diploma, and spent the next 25 years air hammering and replacing concrete and stalls in the barns. And I still love pouring concrete, but that's a young man's job. And so once you hit 40, you got to start working smarter, not harder. So I got to thinking that why am I breaking out 6 inches of perfectly good concrete just because the top 1/8 of an inch is wrong in a lot of instances, like with slippery floors. So that's what kind of started my research into how we can change the texture of the floors for, safety for the cows. So, that started in the early 1990s.
Wow. Yeah. So what was that catalyst that said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to have a business. How did that go?
Well, it went well. Like I said, doing the barn renovations was a joy, walking into an old barn, like, what we had at home, and, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, whatever, the guy had a modern facility. And yeah, that just, I fell in love with that, right from then on. And,
right.
Then, like I said, that's a young man's game when you're pouring concrete. So, the development of the traction milling, that was kind of a long process. It started in the early 90s, and with experimenting around different things we had tried. And then the slat manufacturers approached us and wanted to know what we could do on the precast slats. So we experimented around, and so because what we do on slats, it'll it'll work on any kind of concrete floor. So, and
Right.
the rest is history. I just kept getting further and further away from home, and ended up shutting down the construction end of it. In the early O's, like 2001, 2002, and dedicated full time to crisscrossing North America,
Yeah.
proving that this worked better than anything else out there. So yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
kind of my story.
Yeah. And cattle health is obviously the number one priority on dairy farms. So how does flooring impact the cow's well-being?
Well, the number one problem on a dairy farm has always been mastitis, but lameness is always the number two problem. And like us, if our feet hurt, our whole body hurts. And so with these modern freestall facilities, there's a lot of walking in there for the cows. So if you can't walk in comfort, you can't eat, you can't drink, you can't sleep, you can't go to get milk 2 to 3 times a day. So that's where these modern facilities, the floor is a very critical part. And I got to say that the hoof trimmers do a fantastic job of keeping these cows mobile when they do have problems. But hey, we always got to try and figure out what part of the cause is for foot problems. And it's the floors, and a lot of times, so nutrition and all that plays a factor. But if you can make the floors better for them, then that just eliminates one more variable.
Yeah. And so what exactly is traction milling?
Traction milling is patented equipment that we've developed that provides full floor surface traction in every direction with every step, instead of the old slip and catch method of traditional grooving. Since 1997, we've done thousands of farms across North America on over 7 million square feet. 80% of the floors we have done is over top of the grooving that's not working anymore. So, we give a texture on the floor that gives them firm traction every step, every direction.
Very good. And what about maintenance? What do you recommend?
Well, there's so many things that come into play that can compromise a floor's surface. Some of it's maintenance, some of it's environmental factors, some of it's mechanical actions. I wrote an article for the Progressive Dairyman a few years ago that lists all of those variables and the potential solutions for those. So, we could do a whole seminar just on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so can any barn floor have this done?
Well, AGRITRAC is the only process that you can do on slatted floors, like the precast slatted floors, that won't void the warranty. We worked in conjunction.
Oh, wow.
We worked in conjunction with the slat manufacturers back in the 90s and developing this. And because it'll work on precast, it'll work on any kind of concrete floor. It doesn't even have to be a barn floor. We've done commercial, residential. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to be doing a sidewalk in front of a church. So,
Oh, wow.
So we can do anything that's concrete. We can put this texture in, or lower it to improve the grades. So water runs the right direction in some situations. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do with this, and the equipment is quite small and compact, so we can get into milking parlors, the return alleys.
Oh, nice.
I've even done steps, the steps down into the parlor and that are a hazard to the workers. So
yeah. And many barn floors that I've seen are grooved in one direction, but you say you go in every direction. So why is that? And why is one direction not sufficient?
Well, the grooving, the one direction grooving, they just put a cut in the floor about every 3 or 4 inches, and hopefully when the cow's foot slips, it gets caught and stops. And I always say that, or ask people that if they ever jam their thumbnail over on something, generally we've all experienced that. I say, now stick it in manure for 2 weeks, and what do you got? That's the same as what the hoof trimmers are having to deal with. Delaminations, white line abscesses, sole ulcers, things like that from that slip and catch trauma. The texture that we put on the floor just gives them firm traction all the time. There's no slip and catch. It's a totally different science than grooving.
Hmm. And dark, less ventilated areas like parlors and holding areas, they often have like a brown, greasy film on the floor. What is that film?
That's generally an algae that's it grows in the storage tanks, like in flush barns, and if you've got a pit underneath the milk parlor where it catches the wash water, and then you use that as recycled water for flushing down. Even using fresh water, you'll still end up with that brown grease in certain spots that don't get a lot of traffic, and that's easily taken care of with a cup full of the acid from the milk house, from the wash, the pipeline washes, and that, and put a cup or two of that in a 5-gallon pail of water, spread it around on the floor, and scrub it with a stable broom, and that usually gets rid of it in the short term. But long term, it's just one of those ongoing problems, with the damp and the dark.
Yeah. And lime used to be the solution for barn floors. Is that still a solution that you recommend?
Well, they used to put lime on the cow beds. A lot of people still do. That's a 1940s fix for a 1960s barn. It works great in a tie stall barn. The lime gets kicked out and into the gutter, goes out to the field, and that's good for the crops. But in the freestall barns, it gets kicked off the cow beds and onto the floors. And since the floors are wet, the minute you put lime with water, you have just created mortar, mortar and cement. And so a lot of these floors that are compromised and gotten slippery, everybody thinks that they've worn down when actually they've filled up. And
Wow.
the only time you generally get wear on a barn floor is if you've got a sand barn. So, if you're not using sand, then it's the problem is filling up.
Right. Yeah. And modern freestyle barns, they're typically designed around a manure handling system. But what happens to the floors over time?
Well, as long as you keep it as a liquid manure system, it generally works fine. They've become very efficient in the handling and the cleaning of the floors. Where you run into problems with that is if you start separating the liquids from the solids too quickly, too soon on the floors. That happens from too much ventilation or too much slope on the floors, and then the solids just get spread around like peanut butter and start to dry, and you end up with this layer of almost like greasy chipboard buildup on the floors. And it doesn't matter what kind of texture or grooving you have on the floor, you end up with this dry material that's greasy and slippery. So.
Right. Yeah. I've heard you say before about the oils that are in the feed and how that's contributing to slippery floors too. Is that right?
Yeah, that's something that I've just noticed or started to research on recently in the last year or two. That there's been floors that I've gone to, and you can still see perfect texture and everything, but it looks like they've put a coat of varathane on the floors. It's almost like a shellac, and it's really shiny and it's slippery. And so I've been talking with nutritionists about the palm oil that they're now putting in the feeds and that to up the fat content. And so that's another fairly new thing that we're starting to see that's compromising the floors, making them slippery. The floors look perfect, but there's just no grip to them because it's like a dining room table.
Yeah.
it's smooth.
Wow. Yeah. And what advice would you give to somebody who's planning a new barn build?
Well, it all depends on where you are. There's so many factors and variables again on that. Just the geographic locations and situations, ventilation, temperatures, cold. I can't tell you how to build a perfect barn, but I've been to so many farms and places that I can tell you a lot of things not to do. And there's a lot of that. So there again, that's another whole session and a list of articles that could be written. And I have done a few of those too. So you can always find those in Progressive Dairyman. I've written quite a few on those things for them.
hmm And you've traveled extensively over the last year, well, your whole life really, while you've been doing this, and you've been talking directly to dairy farmers through the pandemic. What are they saying about the direction of the industry?
Well, the direction of the industry is fascinating because 20 years ago at the farm shows, I was starting to get a little bit worried about the future for the dairy industry or farming in general. 'Cause
Mhm.
everybody that you saw walk by the booth, they were 50 plus and all crippled up and limping and just all wore out. And now, recently, the last I'd say 8, 10 years, when you go to a farm show and when you go to the farms. It's the younger generation that's back there now and taking over the farms. And I think technology has had a big influence in that. It's taken away the drudgery and the hard physical labor and that. And now with the equipment and technology, it's just a case of becoming as efficient as possible using it because hey, it is expensive. The technology out there, it's like nothing we've ever imagined 25, 30 years
Oh,
ago.
sure.
But we can do the impossible. It just costs a lot more, and with that you have to be a exceptional manager and be very efficient, and that's what the younger generation has taken on. And I'm really happy to see it. It's great.
Definitely. Yeah. And so what have you observed over the last 16 months on farms in North America? Have there been any changes?
Well, by and large, the rural population, this whole pandemic thing, it really hasn't affected anybody that much. We're everybody's so busy doing what they have to do that they've just shut off the news and moved on. And so that end, I'm not seeing a lot of panic or fear or anything. The cows still have to be milked no matter what. So
Mhm.
and fed and everything. Now, that said, the one thing that I am seeing and hearing more is as efficient as they have to be, it's getting harder and harder because of the input costs that are, going up and
Yeah.
feed shortages and that. That's, the margins are going down, so are getting smaller. So a lot of farmers are having to triage as to what's their priority. Keeping the cows from slipping and falling, or having feed in front of them to eat every day. So they're trying to play both ends to the middle there and still survive. So that's what I'm seeing out there, that it's getting harder and harder to be efficient with those margins that they're working with now.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think we've all discovered how important the supply chain is over the
Yes,
last year, right?
yep, and parts for equipment, that's
Mhm.
getting harder and harder for them. And I know they're struggling with feed shortages out west, and out in BC, it's the feed costs because of the price of land. It's fewer and fewer are making the forage that the cows need, so it's getting more expensive.
Yeah, and now with the crazy weather in all parts of North America too this year, I'm sure that's going to add to the stress.
Oh, yep. that's
Yeah.
that's the thing. The farmers of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and maybe into the 80s, they were dealing with strain. The farmers now, they're dealing with stress.
Yeah, for sure. So where can people find more information about AgriTrack?
Well, we have a website and we're on Facebook. We usually post pictures of the farms and where we've been every time we've been to a place, in the United States and in Canada. And it's not just me that does this. I prefer to be out on the job and doing it as much as possible because, I just like doing the work, so.
Yeah.
But anyway, Facebook, website, anybody wants to call me, email me, by all means. Me, I love to talk. So, if they have questions on anything, or even like what not to do in your new barn when you're building it,
Right.
I can give you a lot of tips and pointers on that. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. good.
Always happy to talk to somebody about this because it's or any of these things. Yeah,
and
it's
you're always a fixture at all the farm shows too. So what's on your schedule upcoming?
Upcoming, I'm going to be heading down to the Maritimes because of the Atlantic bubble down there for the last year and a half. It's been a bit of a struggle getting through down there with all the hoops you got to jump through. So, but as it looks right now, I'm leaving Monday. I've got several jobs on PEI to do, and I'll be working my way back westwards, through Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and back home here. So yeah, and looks like back out west sometime, mid to late September. So after I get everything here in Ontario tidied up. So, yeah, it's I sure get to see a lot of the countryside. And up until 20 years ago, I'd never been any more than 150 miles from home. I thought all of Canada looked like Southern Ontario.
Yeah.
It's a big country, and every province has its charm.
Yeah. And your US office as well, they'll probably be at World Dairy again, right?
No, I don't think they'll be at World Dairy. Okay. They've been focusing mostly on Pennsylvania, New York. This past few years, we will be getting another presence in Wisconsin, probably in the next year or two. But that they seem to be struggling in Wisconsin for some reason. I don't know whether it's because the farms are bigger and they're even more, cash strapped. It's Wisconsin's the Midwest is different than the Northeast in the United States. That's for sure.
Yeah. And so I have one last question for you. What did God put you on the earth to accomplish? And what are you most passionate about? My favorite question.
Favorite question.
Yeah.
I don't know what God has put me on this earth for, because I've given him a lot of opportunities and reasons to take me off of it. And he hasn't yet. So I can only assume that he's not finished yet. So whatever he has planned, he'll show me in his time, and then I'll be happy to do it. Passion. I love to make people laugh or smile, even the checkout girl at the grocery store or something, I usually have something to make her giggle, It's, like everybody else, I've been through some dark times. We all have. And I was fortunate enough that I could use humor as a ladder to climb out of it. And now if I can make somebody laugh, I just sent them on a mini vacation from their problems. And, people seem to appreciate that. And, I make God laugh every day, all I do is tell him what my plans are for the future, and he just laughs and laughs.
I hear that one.
So I make God laugh every day, telling him what I'm going to do.
That's a really good point. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and thanks for sharing the information.
Well, thank you for asking, and helping to get this out. I really appreciate it, and love to see you again. So,
yes, yeah, definitely.
Hopefully at the farm shows, when they come back, we'll be able to connect up again face to face.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to everyone who's watching or listening. If you want more information, the links are provided in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on YouTube and Rumble channels. And the podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Amazon, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a great day.
Thanks, Chrissy. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to today's Ag Spotlight episode, where we put the spotlight on people and companies doing great things for the agricultural industry. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Stitcher, or on your favorite podcasting platform, and give us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on YouTube and Rumble to see the video version of Ag Spotlight. Also, head on over to NorthAmericanAg.com to subscribe to our Industry Connect update newsletter. If you're interested in advertising opportunities, email us at connect@NorthAmericanAg.com. Thanks for listening.